You just about recovered from the previous round and you out there for another one to take more punishment. But therefore, I appreciate even more that you join. I might just want, at this stage, I want to say that I know of many people who have gone through much less than talkers have this year, and I don't think you have ever missed a session, Tarkin, regardless if you're actually just logging on and then jumping onto your surfboard. I would not know that, but I want to compliment you. Thanks. I know it's difficult, and I think similarly the message goes out to everybody. I don't think we all always understand the circumstances that we have to um, um, that we have to or that we experience every day, every week, year in, year out, but especially this year. I do believe that that, or I want to compliment everybody and say thanks. I hate talking to one or two people. I hate talking to a screen. I hate talking to nobody and just make a pre-recording. But this is not about me. It's about you as a group who I think who have all conquered a lot this year. You might not feel like it. You might sometimes feel totally overwhelmed. And if you actually don't feel overwhelmed at this point, you actually don't have a heart and a soul. You're supposed to feel overwhelmed at the moment. It's totally natural and it's fine. And you know what? Having said that, what has made all of you guys prevail up to this point of the year is that you always find a way. You always find a way to make it work. Whatever the challenge is for the day, or however challenging today seem to be, you always make it work and you always find a way. So congratulate yourselves. I might not say it often enough, but I do see it. And the ones who's missing out are the ones who obviously have more challenges that than we actually know about, or who have just not found a way to address all of their challenges. But yeah, as I said at the start of the year, we're all in this together. Only thing, unfortunately, I cannot do on your behalf is write your exam for you. So let's try and prepare you better for your exam and the final stretch to the end of the year. Right. Closing techniques, something that we still find in our previous chapter. I didn't want to rush through it because, excuse me, when you close a sale, it is important. It is very important that you don't rush yourself. You sometimes, if you pick up on the buying signals that we have identified in the previous session, it is important, yes, that you must be ready to conclude the transaction, but it doesn't mean that you have to force the issue. Sometimes the direct request is valid because the customer, you can see all the signals are there, and then it's a question of just asking, say, right, sir, so would you like to follow me so we can complete the paperwork? One that is a combination, maybe sometimes, because they of approaches or techniques very similar to each other, the benefit summary and the balance sheet close. Benefit summary focuses more sort of on just highlighting the benefits, where the balance sheet is more sort of giving you the positives and the negatives, and then you weigh the two up against each other. But they're quite similar. You will, I think, with experience, get to know what customer to use the different methods to. Sometimes a customer who you are, if you're not 100% sure that all the signs are there that the customer is ready to make the buy, but you're not 100% sure, then rather go with the benefit summary. Keep the negative out of it. Don't give the customer another opportunity now to weigh up the positives and the negatives. Those are the popular ones that's used. Alternative choices is also a very good, solid closing technique. You give the customer a choice between A and B. Okay, right. So you like this vehicle? What would you? Is it going to be a blue one or a silver one? What you give them choices, but don't give them 5 million choices. As it says, alternative choices. Give them A or a B. Right. Sometimes it helps to compliment the customer, especially if you do this in combination with the benefit summary closing technique. You've listed the benefits, and then also you say, but say, you know what? And then you throw in the compliment. With the benefits, I just said, can you just imagine you having that? And I mean, you're going to be so much better off than your competitors. Okay. Or just imagine you driving home tonight and parking in your driveway while all your neighbors are there in this brand new vehicle, in the color that you have selected, everything. Wouldn't that just that would be smart? That would be really grand. You can add a compliment very often to the benefit summary method to secure close. Negotiation, more the case, and we'll deal with that tomorrow in chapter 14. When you are doing business in or selling in a business market, not too much negotiation is going to happen in most sales transactions. But when it becomes bigger transactions for individual consumers like houses and cars, there is a bit of a negotiation. Negotiation might not be a reduction in the fee. Don't always see a negotiation as a reduction in the price. You can sometimes see it as extended payback terms, for instance. If it's a vehicle, instead of 48 months, 5,000 Rand for 48 months, you can actually do 60 months, but 3,500 Rand. People will always go for a longer period if they can pay less every month now, although in the long run they actually pay more. But it's what they can afford now and what they're comfortable with now that very often sways a negotiation. The next chapter deals with following up. Once you have closed the sale, we know that especially in cases where customers might start doubting if they've made the right decision, if you have taken care of following up with that customer, it will help just to confirm again that they have made the right decision. It might be that there's 1 or 2 issues that they're uncertain of, that you can just reinforce the decision that they've taken. They're not going to, they sometimes need that. People, often as much as people would like to hear that they are making the right decision, they would like to know afterwards that they have made the right decision. Especially if your intention is to convert this customer into a loyal supporter that will continue to do business with you in future. Right, let's go into chapter 11 and let's look at some steps to or the steps in the follow-up. The first step would be that you have to ensure that the order is correct. So we said yesterday that have you received delivery? Because when you were here with us yesterday, we said that it will be delivered to your office before close of business tomorrow. It's almost close of business. Have you received the items that you ordered? Just follow up and see if the order is correct, if they've received it, and if they've received everything that they have ordered. Okay. Sometimes, if it's possible, if it's physically possible, depending obviously on the type of transaction, it's sometimes good for the salesperson to also just pop in and to the client rather than just give them a call to say, right, so I just want to follow up. I mean, did you receive your order? Was everything fine? Yeah, I received the order, but the box is there. I haven't opened it yet. Oh, just quickly. I mean, I'm here now. Let's quickly go through it. If there's a mistake, then I can actually, I'll know about it immediately and we can resolve it. Okay, so that's just part of the extra mile that you're going for the customer. Make sure that your contracts are correct, that all the forms have been signed, that all the addendums have been signed, that all the additional documentation has been received, because that can sometimes hold up a transaction and that frustrates people. And ideally, you would like this to be finished by the time that you actually, when the customer leaves your office. But we know that sometimes it's not possible. We also know that sometimes nowadays a lot of transactions are done where there's no contact between the buyer and the seller because it's done online. But it is a good it's good policy for you just to make sure that everything is there, because sometimes people's frustration, and it happened to me on one or two occasions where I supplied all the paperwork, but all the paperwork was not sent to the next person in the line, and I was getting frustrated. And I was getting frustrated with the wrong person, because the person I was getting frustrated with did his job, but the next person in line didn't. So it's also part of your closure is to ensure that that all these all the required documentation is correct. And it's a very nice gesture just to thank the customer. Thank them for doing business with you. It's just good manners. Good service makes you keep your customers. We have a situation or a condition that we call the post-person purchase dissonance, where customers, like most of us, especially when we bought something that's expensive, we think, oh my goodness, did I make the right decision? Am I 100% happy with what I've decision that I've taken? Just maybe I should. That's totally natural. It happens to all of us, and how we deal with it is very important. If we have a sales consultant who follow up after the sale has been concluded with us in the efficient manner that they should, it could actually help us with our state of post-purchase dissonance, because they could basically just ask you they will ask you the right questions. That's exactly what it says. So when you say that you're unsure, what exactly are troubling you? Is it the color? Is it and I think that, that's sometimes very helpful, that a salesperson, as part of their follow-up, ensure that the customer's satisfaction with the purchase is actually or has actually been achieved. You also have to follow up with the customer even if they haven't bought from you. It's very important, because maybe at that point they were totally blown away and amazed by the product, but they honestly, the timing was just not, they don't have the money to pay for it at that point. They want it, but they just can't see themselves getting it at that moment, for various reasons, and for many of the objections that we've addressed in the previous chapter as well. And this is where you have to make sure that you follow up with this customer to see if now is maybe the right time, 3, 4, 5 months later, based on how you ended the previous conversation with them. You should know when it is a good time. I told you the story previously about my commitment to the National Sea Rescue Institute and my contributions that I've made to them. And I am very open with them when I say, but the time is not right now, but you can call me in December again. And I mean it. I would not say call me in December and I'm going to block the calls. I will be in a better position in December to make a commitment. So it's sometimes very important that you do not just discard the customers who did not purchase from you, who don't give up on anybody. It's the manner in which the transaction or even the non-transaction is is concluded that result in customers eventually becoming customers with you, or remaining customers with you. At any point, people, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and say, I have a question, please, can you help me with this? Okay, otherwise I'm assuming that you're all good and that you understand the content that we are busy discussing. What's the intention? Can you remember still from your term test? What's the main objective? I'm not sure if it was for you, if it was for the second years. What's the main objective? No, it was for the second years, but I can ask you the same question. What's the main objective of any salesperson? What's your main goal? Anybody?
So I typed it in the chat then so I can see.
I saw yes, yeah. Yep, to make the sale. That's the main objective. Secondary to that is to do it in such a manner that you keep the customer. You know, I was surprised that still, with my second years, when I asked them that question in the exam, in the test, that some still got it wrong. To grow sales. Yeah, but how are you going to grow sales? You have to close a sale first before you can actually make a sale. And those are all objectives that we want to achieve, yes. But our main goal as a salesperson is to close the deal, to make the sale. And then, my apologies. And then, as I said, doing it in such a nice way, in such a professional manner that our customers want to come back to us. For you to ensure that this happens, unfortunately, you need the entire team to buy into this. Especially if in your business, you are not the person who deals with everything right from in the sales process, the finance, the paperwork, the whole lot. If you are, that remains your responsibility, and that makes it a bit easier. Maybe more work for you, but easier to manage and easier to satisfy the customer because you are dealing with the customer and you're the only one dealing with the customer. So you can do great or you can mess it up. It becomes challenging if you're part of a team where somebody else is responsible to complete the paperwork and somebody else is responsible for the financial component and somebody else is responsible for the delivery. If it's just you, it makes it a bit easier. So to retain a customer, make sure that if you're part of a team, that everybody is on the same page when it comes to the expected delivery or quality of service delivery. Otherwise, somebody's going to be disappointed. And once that happens, it's like a team where people are pointing fingers at each other when they start losing. Right. We're almost done. Hang in there, people. And it's Thursday. We have to ensure, and that's part of our planning, when we do our planning, we very carefully identify what the customer's needs are. And when we identify what the customer's needs are, we obviously will prepare a way in how we can satisfy that particular need. But we also have to be very clear from the start. We know what the customer expects from us. We set our own bars when it comes to service delivery, but that might not be what the customer expects. So make sure that that you also determine at the start what the customer expects. Make sure that you know what the benchmarks in your particular industry is, because you cannot satisfy a customer with the service that you offer if your service is below the industry standard. If you are delivering a worse service than your competitor, the customer knows the level of service of everybody in the industry. That's why often they choose certain brands, because of the reputation of that particular brand, the quality of service that that brand is known for. So the standard has been set there. Make sure that that standard is delivered, preferably exceeded, but at least delivered. Too often nowadays we accept mediocre service as, you know what, this is Africa, or you know what, this is just how it is. It's not how it is. It's not how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be load shedding. It's not supposed to cost us 300 million rand per day, the economy. Just for Cape Town. I'm not talking about the country. We sometimes have to say enough is enough. There is a certain standard. You know what, guys? For many years now, we've actually taken enough excuses. And if we are part of the solution, tell us, because we are switching off our stuff when we don't need it. We are ensuring that we can do what we can do and use electricity economically. Enough said about our current predicament about lack of stable electricity supply, but it's an example that we cannot ignore to use when we refer to expected service as to delivered service. While we're on that subject, as a matter of fact, I read an interesting article in News 24 this morning. Now, just before the elections, on all the municipalities just before the elections on Monday have been graded, and they've been graded by I'm not exactly sure who grades them, just to make sure if they comply to everything that's expected of them as a service deliverant. And there's one municipality in KZN close to the foot of the Drakensberg, very much forestry and farming community, where apparently they are the worst municipality in South Africa, where out of their operational budget that they get every year, which is in excess of 50 million rand, they spend 134% on salaries, where the benchmark is 25 to 40%, and some businesses will tell you once your salary bill goes beyond 35%, you're entering dangerous territory. I think with the pandemic and the challenges, it's been lowered a bit. So businesses feel if I spend about 30% of my operational budget on salaries, I'm actually okay. Because if something goes wrong, you can't just let people go. So that's the last thing that happens if a business starts, if business transactions start decreasing and you're starting to battle as a business. And it was just amazing to me to see that there is in a municipality where none of the houses in that particular community have sanitary services provided to them. There's no refuge service offered, so I don't know where their refuge goes, because it's not collected on a regular basis like we are used to in our municipalities. But they still spend 143% of their budget on salaries. Anyway, interesting fact, just another example of service not happening and why people get frustrated So we don't want to get to that level. We want to make sure that we are aware of, and you don't compare yourself with a service provider like I've just mentioned. You say, okay, that's what they're doing, so we got to do just that bit better. No, 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 no. They are way below the standard of the particular industry, and therefore, that's not our aim. Our aim is not to do better than the worst. Our aim is to do better than the best. What can we expect in chapter 12? This is the chapter about the legal and ethical, excuse me, the legal and ethical issues in sales. What I've highlighted in this particular chapter are the following. What is ethics? Ethics, quite simply, is the principles that govern the behavior of our individually or as a group, our behaviors. The principles that govern that. What is right and what is wrong, in simple terms. It's ethical if it's the right thing that you are doing. Ethical behavior in general, we're not just talking about the sales profession, requires you to be honest and truthful, requires you to maintain people's confidence in you because they trust you. It means that you're following the rules. Even if you see other people breaking the rules, it doesn't mean that, again, you're not going to follow the worst example. You're going to try and be the best example you can be. Treat everybody fairly. When you're representing the company, show loyalty to the company. You don't badmouth your business in front of a customer, for instance, and take responsibility. It's quite simple. I mean, if nobody else does, I said, listen, I mean, I'm not going to wait for that person to do it. I'll do it myself. It's as simple as that. We all have good ethical genes in us. We don't always use them effectively, but we can strive to achieving everything that we have just identified on the previous page. Being able to distinguish between what is right and wrong, we know that is from a very early age, but at the age of 5, you start having the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. And when you are sort of more matured and in the profession of sales, you have to, at that stage already, because we know from a very early age, you know what is right and what is wrong. If you're the face of the company, and the images that we've used in the text was quite descriptive. I think we had the former American president and we had the Dalai Lama, definitely two distinctly different characters and images. And yeah, I suppose it depends on what business you represent, but I know whose face I want as my poster person. Can people trust you? And what does trust mean? Trust means that you actually do what you promise. People trust you because you show integrity, and that is to actually do what you have set out to do. I'll make sure that that vehicle is there tomorrow, sir. You know what? Even if you have to drive, my wife bought a car from a dealer in Johannesburg a couple of months ago, and the vehicle was expected from day one. Very impressed with the company who was doing the delivery of the vehicle, because it was going to be delivered basically to the driveway, and somewhere along the line, after emails, WhatsApp's keeping us up. We're just loading the car on a truck, ma'am. Expect to leave in about an hour's time. 3 hours later, we're still here. We haven't loaded the. So they kept you in the loop the whole time. I started getting worried after about 6 hours, and they still haven't loaded the vehicle. So, you know what? That's all good. So I phoned a dealer in Cape Town who actually was representing the same company down here in the south. And they said they realized that the vehicle that they had to pick up is actually not in Johannesburg. It's in a destination which I won't mention, in the northwest. I said, all right, because you know what? My wife has sold her car. Her car has been collected already by the new owner, and she hasn't got transport. Some of us have to work. Otherwise, we can't pay the new car that we actually just bought. And it took us half an hour for that company to come back to us and said, we have located somebody that will be able to help us in that town in the northwest. They will actually drive the vehicle to the collection point in Johannesburg and ensure that it gets on the truck. I was rather impressed. They still delivered in the time that they said, but they went out of their way to make you feel that, you know what, you are special. We didn't buy Aston Martin. I will never be able to afford buying an Aston Martin, but it wasn't the amount that was spent. It was just, you know what, we said to the customer that they will have their car by a certain time, because it was made very clear that this is the expectation, because the customer has other commitments. Otherwise, we will have to provide them at our own cost, obviously with a vehicle that they can use in the interim. They fixed the problem because they just said it's the right thing to do. This is not the customer's problem. It shouldn't be the customer's problem. Right. Let's look at some factors that influence ethical behavior. It could be the individual, or it could be the organization. Each of them have a commitment towards ethical behavior. The individual, when they are employed in the first place, have certain hoops that they have to jump through, and certain requirements that needs to be met, which is clarified, which is in the code of conduct that is the customer or the individual signs with the organization that employ them. And that business also needs to conduct their business in an ethical manner. Okay, they can't expect you to do things that is against your religion or belief or values. I think in the first place, you wouldn't have taken a job if that was clear from the start. But it sometimes happen in businesses that it's not disclosed, and then businesses, organizations later on come with certain requirements, and you say, nah, you know what, that goes against my grain. It doesn't, no, I don't agree with that. And then we have issues. So to avoid those issues, make sure that we, as individuals, we are clear about what we want, what our stand is, what our values are on important issues, and then also that when we take a job, that the business that we are employed with, that we can marry our values, our personal values, with theirs. Now, there are certain ethical areas that, especially in sales, that salespeople deal with on a regular basis. They would be, for instance, dealing with employees, dealing with customers, dealing with competitors, as well as our colleagues. When you're dealing with our colleagues, or from a business point of view, dealing with our employees, ethical behavior like bribery, how sometimes certain employees just they couldn't be bothered with what the code of conduct is. it says that you have to be at work at 8, start work at 8, you finish at 4, you have an hour lunch. They couldn't be bothered. Some days they are there 7:45. Most of the time they're 8:30. They take extended lunches. They just couldn't be bothered. So there are certain ways in which employees behave that is just unacceptable. How we as colleagues behave with each other. Your colleague is busy with the clients and one of their customers phone in or one of their prospects phone in. You take the message. You don't give them that message, but you actually hijack that customer and you follow up with that customer, basically stealing your prospect from your colleague. That's not on. We do not badmouth our competitors. Rather spend extra the time that you actually think and consider of spending bad-mouthing your competitors. Actually, you could have spent much better to offer a greater service, because that's going to, in the long run, be of greater value to you. How you deal with customers. You don't take bribes with customers. You don't lie to customers about or just withhold certain information from customers. Those are all issues, and I think, as I said, I'm not going into great detail on the subject because it is quite clear in chapter 12. I'm just highlighting these specific areas in chapter 12 that I want you to engage in great detail when you prepare finally for your exam. Any questions at this point? We're almost done, people. Any questions at this point on the work that we're currently busy with, or anything that we have done during the session? We all good? You still also hanging in there? Okay, no news is good news. Certain legal issues that you have to obviously deal with as well, but we've addressed in this chapter was the contract. Make sure that that you know what should be in a contract, the basics that needs to be in a contract. Pay attention to the National Consumer Protection Act that protects the consumer from being provided with credit that they cannot afford, that they cannot pay back. National Credit Act. The POPI Act is not on here because we did it in the previous chapter, but basically protection of personal information. You cannot disclose that. It's a new regulation that or legislation that is effective from the 1st of July this year that very much impacts on how sales is done, because very often we know we still might get, because not everybody's complying to the new legislation as they should. You're still getting these anonymous calls from certain numbers that when you pick up, it's actually a salesperson who's trying to sell something to you that you don't have a need for. And I think if you knew the number, you would have probably had it in your phone. So they are just familiarize yourself again with the content of the POPI Act. But again, people, in the exam, I'm not going to ask you to draft a contract for me, contract of sale. I'm not going to ask you to provide me with the content of the Consumer Protection Act or the POPI Act or the National Credit Act for that matter. Okay, so it's know it to the level, like I said at the start of the previous session. What is the act about? And how does it affect you as a salesperson and the customer that you work with? Okay. Any questions, anybody? Are you still good? All still good?
All good, sir. Thank you.
Very nice to hear that. Okay, so I'll leave you with this until tomorrow morning, first period. Unfortunately, you have to do the hard yards. The hard yards is not going to be done by somebody else. Okay, so get it. Thanks, everybody. thanks for the session. Good luck with your load shedding and planning a day around that, and your classes and everything else. We will finish our revision tomorrow, first period, when we start with chapters 13, 14, and 15. Both today's session, the recordings will be uploaded now. The PDF for the slides is already on there, as well as tomorrow's slides. Okay. If nobody has any questions, I think we've reached the end of the road. Thank you very much.